Welcome dear learners. This lecture on ethnographers from regional to transnational has been developed based on the growth of ethnography through the ages. It has been divided into two major segments to be discussed. They are ethnographers from British and American school of thought and Indian school of thought. Shall we now go to the topic? In this session, scholars such Gerhard Friedrich Müller, Franz Boas, Margaret Mead, and Edmund Ronald Leach, Bronislaw Gaspar Malinowski, Paul Wilkes, Mysore Narasimhachari Srinivas, which means M.N. Srinivas, Shyama Saran Dubey, Makim Marriott, L.B. Vidyarthi, Nirmal Kumar Bose, G.S. Gure, Dhirendranath Majumdar, Sarath Chandra Rai, Airavati Karve, Varier Elvin, and A. Ayyappan are explained based on their contribution to the field of ethnography at Indian context as well as international outlook. Let us start with Müller. Müller was born in Herford while he was educated at Leipzig in 1725. He was invited to St. Petersburg to co-found the Imperial Academy of Sciences. Müller participated in the second Kamchatka expedition, which reported on life and nature of the further, which means eastern side of the Aral mountain range. From 1733 to 1743, 19 scientists and artists traveled through Siberia to study people, cultures and collected data for creation of maps. Müller, who described and categorized clothing, religions and rituals of the Siberian ethnic groups, is considered to be the father of ethnography. The next scholar is Franz Boas. Franz Uri Boas was a German American anthropologist and a pioneer of modern anthropology who has been called the father of American anthropology. His work is associated with the movement of anthropological historicism. The next important scholar is Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead was an American cultural anthropologist who featured frequently as an author and a speaker in the mass media during 1960s and 70s. She earned her bachelor's degree at Barnard College, New York City, and her MA and PhD degrees from Columbia University. Sir Edmund Ronald Leach, he was a British social anthropologist. Leach spanned the gap between British structural functionalism, got experienced with the work of Radcliffe Brown and Malinowski, and French structuralism exemplified by Lévi-Strauss. Despite being a central interpreter of Lévi-Strauss' work, producing several introductory works on Lévi-Strauss' theoretical perspective, Leach considered himself at heart still a functionalist. Bronislaw Malinowski, he was a Polish anthropologist, often considered one of the most important 20th century anthropologists. Bronislaw Malinowski advanced cultural anthropology away from an evolutionary focus into a science that embraced a sociological and psychological field of inquiry. His influential writings and charismatic, warm character made him a very popular lecturer and inspired many of his students to pursue various occupations, mainly in the field of cultural anthropology. He showed that so-called primitive people are capable of the same types and levels of cognitive reasoning as those from more advanced societies. He helped defeat social Darwinist claims that all societies passed through the same distinct and predictable stages and in the same predictable order along a single linear trajectory. His work revealed that societies and individuals were far more complicated and hard to predict, and that they varied tremendously. He showed in detail through his meticulous field work and brilliant observations that the wealth of diversity was far greater than previously imagined. Malinowski showed in detail that no matter how strange or exotic various practices might appear to outsiders, they were an integral part of healthy functioning of their community. He showed the logic and function a practice would have within the context of that society. Although most developed world observers might think of magic as being merely superstitious, Malinowski showed the foundation that it had to individuals within a particular context. When Trobriand Islanders went fishing in a lagoon, it was a simple matter. But when they had to go beyond the reefs into the deep ocean, there were many dangers and unpredictable difficulties. This was the occasion in which the magic rituals reinforced the ability for the fisherman to brave all these problems. The magic rites thus functioned to help them to do what they needed to do. The next scholar is Paul Willis. Paul Willis is a British social scientist known for his work in sociology and cultural studies. Paul Willis' work is widely read and in the fields of sociology, anthropology and education. His work emphasizing consumer culture, socialization, music and popular culture. He was born in Wolverhampton and received his education at the University of Cambridge and at University of Birmingham. He worked at Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies and subsequently at the University of Wolverhampton. He was a professor of social and cultural ethnography at Keele University. Mysore Narasimhachari Srinivas. In short form, he is known as M.N. Srinivas. Srinivas has initiated macro-sociological generalizations on micro-anthropological insights, not on the basis of Western textbooks, indigenous sacred texts, but from direct observation, intensive fieldwork of Cougs between 1940 to 1942. Srinivas' studies of caste and religion, and not only their structural functional aspects, dynamics of the caste system in rural settings. His conceptual tools such as dominant caste, Sanskritization, Westernization and secularization. Two basic concepts to understand our society, book view and fieldwork view. Book view is also known as ontology. Different regions of Indian society can be attained through fieldwork, thus we call it as fieldwork. The next scholar is Shyama Charan Dubey, in short S.E. Dubey. Anthropologist and sociologist. S.E. Dubey, basically a product of Lucknow. Insight gained from a macro perspective, Dubey has all through been an ardent advocate of interdisciplinary orientation and a promoter of research interest. Dubey proposed a more comprehensive frame of reference for the study of complex cultures to understand Indian reality. He applied deductive positivistic rather than inductive inferential approach. Makim Mariad, he was a professor in the Department of Anthropology in Social Sciences Collegiate Division of University of Chicago. Village in India, which means the out of field work in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra. Mariad used the structural functional influence by model of Robert Redfield and Milton Singer. The basic ideas in this approach are civilization and social organization of tradition. Structural tradition grows in two stages. One is through orthogenetic or indigenous evolution. The second one is through heterogeneity encounters or contracts with other cultures and civilization. The next important scholar, L.P. Vidyarthi. L.P. Vidyarthi kept notable contribution in different aspects. He was concerned with village studies, studies of sacred complex and pilgrimage sites, applied and action anthropology, scheduled castes, folklore research, urban industrial anthropology, leadership studies, fieldwork tradition, anthropological theories. He tried hard for socio-economic welfare and advancement of the tribes. The dimension of work was so extensive and the number of books and papers were so many that after his death, a commemorative volume was published in 1986, being edited by M.K. Gautam and A.K. Singh, where different learned scholars got an opportunity to discuss the life and work of Professor Vidyarthi. He wrote 21 books by himself. In 9 books, he was a co-author. 31 books were edited and more than 150 significant articles were written by him during the period from 1954 to 1982. However, some of his important works are Sacred Complex of Hindu Gaya, the Malar Nature Man Spirit Complex in Hill Tribes of Bihar, Cultural Contours of Tribal Bihar, Applied Anthropology in India, Conflict and Tension of Social Trend in India, Tribal Culture of India, Rise of Anthropology in India in 2 volumes, Trends in World Anthropology, etc. Professor Vidyarthi was conferred the Distinguishable Service Award jointly by the Association for Anthropological Diplomacy, Politics and Society and Association of Third World Anthropology in the year 1983. He was the first person from a developing country to receive such an honor. His multidimensional academic works greet him as one of the top anthropologists of the world. We have lost this great academician forever in 1985. The next scholar, Nirmal Kumar, short known as N.K. Bose, studied the material traits for analyzing their distribution at various places in India. His understanding of tribals absorption to caste is a significant angle to analyze the unity of Indian culture. He focuses on how similar material culture helps in binding zones of India into one framework. Further, the linkage of India through trades, customs, beliefs, etc. placed his analysis at the significant platform. Although Bose was a student of Indian civilization, he has not made any conscious effort to distinguish the civilization from culture. He has used both of them in an overlapping manner. The contribution of Bose are immensely valuable, but we should always keep in mind that Bose was essentially an anthropologist and ethnologist. He was also a linguistic anthropologist. Anthropology is a holistic social sciences. It has great faith in ethnological fieldwork. Bose was skilled in these canons of anthropology, but despite his persistent association with Gandhi, he did not take into account the diversity and plurality of Indian society. He very much wanted the integration of tribals into Hindu society. He shows all sympathy and softness towards tribals. He is comfortable to find the absorption of tribals into the Hindu society. This made him a sectarian anthropologist. In other words, he was a champion of Hindutva ideology. The present day tribals would not digest the prescription of Bose. The theory of N.K. Bose has always been weak, and it has been the weakness of all empirical anthropologists. However, it must be observed that Bose attempted to respond to the challenges of his era. Bose used traditional textual categories such as Sattva, Raja, Tamash and Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha in the classification of cultures, but he was very critical about simplistic of textual notion in the study of Indian civilization without taking full note of historical and social contexts. G.S. Gure. The sweep of Gure's works and the wide range of his intellectual interests have had a profound influence on the development of the twin disciplines, sociology and social anthropology in India. Like a discreet butterfly, Gure moved from one theme to another with equal interest, erudition and ability. He showed India to an inexhaustible mind where sociologists and social anthropologists could conduct endless explorations. He indicated innumerable but unexplored dimensions of Indian society, culture and social institutions, which would occupy social analysis for decades if they had both the desire and the ability to know. Gure's basic discipline may be regarded as social anthropology since his PhD was under W.H.R. Rivers at Cambridge. The range of Gure's scholarly interest and research is astounding. Explorations of diverse aspects of Indian culture and society through the use of ideological sources permitted intellectual concerns and the empirical research pursuits. His erudition and versatility therefore are substantiated by the wide range of his research from Sanskrit text through interpretations of Indian culture and society. This rare spirit of inquiry and commitment to advancing the frontiers of knowledge was one of Gure's precious gifts to Indian sociology and social anthropology. His diversified interests are also reflected in the greater variety of works of his research students produced on themes ranging from family, kinship structures, marriage, religious sects, ethnic groups, caste and aboriginals, their customs and institutions, to social differentiation and stratification, caste and class, education and society, the Indian nationalist movement, social structure and social change in specific villages or regions of India, and also urbanization, industrialization and related social problems in India. The range of Gure's interest is encyclopedic. His abiding interest is in the course of world civilization in general and in Hindu civilization in particular. He has analyzed various aspects like the origin and evolution of caste, the evolution of Indo-Aryan family structures and its connections with the Indo-European family structure and specific institutions like Gotra, etc. Analysis of the diverse aspect of the evolution of Indian social history and culture thus constitutes the major preoccupation of Gure. The next scholar is Dharendranath Majumdar. In the field of anthropology, Majumdar's vast contribution came mainly in the form of extensive anthropometric and serological surveys, which was carried out among the tribes and castes of Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat and Bengal. He emphasized statistical techniques in the analysis of anthropometric and serological data. This particular method was designated as biometrics methods in anthropology. In the field of cultural anthropology, D.N. Majumdar is famous for his critical ethnography. He undertook extensive field works among the house of Kolhan in Bihar, the Khasas, the Korava and the Tharus of Uttar Pradesh, the Gonds of Bastar in Madhya Pradesh and the Bhils of Gujarat. He was a painstaking and patient field worker, being influenced by S.C. Roy and Bronislaw Malinowski. He conducted each field work among particular tribal area over several years and observed the people in repeated short and long trips. He was attentive in learning of tribal and folk dialects. In ethnography, he tried to cover all the major aspects of culture such as economics, kinship, religion, etc. He studied the cultures as a whole rather than the piecemeal problems. In later years, he became interested in investigating the cultural change but did not neglect the village studies or urban surveys. The next scholar is Sarath Chandra Roy. Sarath Chandra Roy is considered as the father of Indian ethnography. He not only made valuable contribution in the study of human society and culture, he tried to popularize the subject of anthropology among the general readers. Anthropology is also indebted to his encyclopedic scholarship and analytic appraisal. Otherwise, anthropology could not have reached the degree of precision or objectivity to fulfill its demand as a science. S. Roy also pleaded for the application of anthropology in finding out the causes of sufferings of the people. The great personality passed away in 1942, causing an irrecoverable loss. His bibliography was published twice. First one was compiled by W.G. Archer and published in Man in India. The second was an exhaustive bibliography published in the Bulletin of the Anthropological Survey of India. Airavati Karve. Airavati Karve was India's first woman anthropologist at a time when anthropology and sociology were still developing as university disciplines. She was also the founder of anthropology department at Pune, now Pune University, an Indologist who mined Sanskrit text for sociological features, an anthropologist, serologist and paleontologist, a collector of folk songs, a translator of feminist poems and a Marathi writer and essayist of no mean repute, whose book Yogendra transformed our understanding of Mahabharata. Airavati Karve was born in Burma and educated in Pune, a master's degree in sociology from Mumbai in 1928 and a doctoral degree in anthropology from Berlin in 1930, marked the onset of a long and distinguished career of pioneering research. Karve, a researcher of international repute, known to have nurtured social sense in people and achieved supremacy in the fields of sociology, cultural and physical anthropology, was also an excellent author and a fine example of women's liberations. Karve's major writings on kinship organization in India in 1953 and Uganda, the end of an epoch. The next foreign scholar, Verrier Elwin. Harry Warrior Elvin was a British-born Indian anthropologist, ethnologist and tribal activist who began his career in India as a Christian missionary. He first abandoned the clergy to work with Mahatma Gandhi and the Indian National Congress. Then he converted into Hinduism in 1935 after staying in a Gandhian ashram and split with the nationalists over what he felt was an over hasty process of transformation and assimilation for the tribals. Warrior Elvin is best known for his early work with the Baigas and Gonds of Odisha and Madhya Pradesh in central India, and he married a 13-year-old member of one of the communities he studied. He later also worked on the tribals of several northeast Indian states, especially Northeast Frontier Agency, and settled in Shillong, the hill capital of Meghalaya. In time, he became an authority on Indian tribal lifestyle and culture, particularly on the Gonti people. He served as a deputy director of the Anthropological Survey of India upon its formation in 1945. Post independence, he took up Indian citizenship. Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru appointed him as an advisor on tribal affairs for northeastern India, and later he was anthropological advisor to the government of NIFA, now Arunachal Pradesh. His philosophy towards the Northeast was partially responsible in its discontent from the modern world. The government of India awarded him the third highest civilian honor of the Padma Bhushan in 1961. His autobiography, The Tribal World of Warrior Elvin, won him the 1965 Sahitya Akademi Award in English language, given by the Sahitya Akademi, India's National Academy of Letters. The next scholar, Dr. A. Ayyappan. Dr. A. Ayyappan joined the Utkal University in 1958 as a professor of anthropology, then a newly created postgraduate department after his retirement from the service as head of the Madras Museum. His stepping into this department was not restricted to teaching alone. He introduced the museology as a practical paper in the anthropology curriculum. His long expertise in Madras Museum enabled him to organize this course in no time. Not only he stressed on the study of ethnological materials which were to be preserved in a scientific way, his experiences in the Madras Museum were imparted to the students in a very simple way. These objects were at first stored and then displayed in a hall where the students got the facility of handling them, repair the broken pieces and applied insecticides and chemicals to prevent the object from being destroyed. Thus, the lessons of the collection through field explorations, preservation in the store and conservation of the broken objects were imparted to the students, the essential items of the museology study. Professor A. Ayyappan got involved in the planning of the tribal welfare and activated the Tribal Research Bureau, which at present is rechristened as Tribal and Harijan Research and Training Institute. He caused a museum to be built in that institution, which now houses many more objects of the Orissa tribes. Professor A. Ayyappan's students with a museology training in its rudimentary form collected, proliferated and preserved the objects of the most primitive tribes of Odisha like Banda, Gadaba, Juang, Dongriya, Kond and Padi Punias. Such objects with additions every year have enriched the THRTI museum. Professor Ayyappan remained the advisor of this institution and helped in the publication of journal Adivasi, in which the research findings were published. In this, each employed student was given topics and helped Professor Ayyappan to make the journal reader research oriented while giving ideas to the government which line to be followed for the upliftment of the individual tribal group and planning of a common program for the purpose. Probably the tribal development cooperatives guided by his students, employees, helped in economic enhancement of different tribal groups who could market their commodities direct to the government instead of middlemen. Probably Professor Ayyappan's earlier work among the Eedavas helped him to reflect upon the Orissa tribal problems. Another important contribution of Professor Ayyappan was the reorganization of the Odisha State Museum as a multi-purpose museum with the addition of natural history, mining and geology and anthropology galleries. This plan linked earlier history and archaeology subjects with the earlier pre- and proto-historic cultural phases. Aspects relating to man and archaeology were linked in the planning of anthropology galleries, which were again linked with the zoological evolutions on the basis of Darwin's theory to link up human evolution with human culture in this part of India. The preparation of the dioramas for display purposes was the mental child of Professor Ayyappan was undertaken in consultation with Professor Cora Dubais, the American professor of anthropology. His knowledge in Madras Museum at Chennai, where Robert Bruce Foote, the father of Indian prehistoric archaeology, once laid his hands on, proved quite useful in this venture. The contribution of Professor Ayyappan to the organizational setup of Odisha State Museum was linked to natural history with history and culture by anthropology, consisting of pre, proto and early history on the one hand and the ethnographic links through the living people and their cultural traits encased in dioramas in another. It will not be the output of place to mention how the dioramas were planned with the existing museum building in 3 halls of projecting corners. One hall was exclusively marked for the display of tribes with their costumes and ornamentals wrapped in life-size model. Odisha was a maritime power with a sizable and dominant fishing community spreading from the coast of Bengal border to that of Andhra. The catamaran and fishing nets on the sandy beach with the blue sea breaking waves at the background was depicted in an open diorama, which is certainly a novel way of conveying the cultural message to others as to how the past is linked with the present. Such a linkage is also displayed by costumes on wire models and the raw karanga bark on the one hand and the finished cloth woven by the bondos and panos for the godabas on the other. Even the display of ornaments used by the tribes and folk in succession from bark, lead and metal ornaments were instructed by him. Dear learners, in this lecture we have discussed Indian scholars to the international scholars who are worked the ethnographic and the ethnographers. So, this scholars through the ages, it has been divided into 2 major segments. One is British and American school of thought of anthropology, and now the Indian school of thought. I hope you all must have enjoyed the session and it may have enriched the knowledge on the history of ethnography studies. Dear learners, we will meet with another schedule. Thank you. All the best.